let's move on to college football. Since 2014, college football has been using a 4-team playoff to determine the champion. Those teams included in the playoffs are selected by a playoff committee. What are your thoughts on the current college football playoff format? Would you change it at all? How and why? Mr. Mata, we'll hear your response first this time.
So the current format, I think it's an improvement from the BCS. I think there was some injustice in the BCS for some teams, specifically back in 2011. Again, bringing up some of our teams, LSU faced Alabama. I felt like Oklahoma State should have been in there. I think a playoff would have been a good time to be used during that specific year. And there's been other cases where a team's kind of left out and they're like, man, I just want to play it on the field. So I think the playoff, the 4-team playoff is an improvement, but I think we can't deny the fact that some of the semifinal games have been lopsided, which is concerning, and it points out a disparity of talent between really the top 5 teams in college football, between them and the rest of college football. But anyways, back to the point. I actually had written an essay about this back in high school, and I said 32 teams, and I think I was a little young and reckless. That's a little too radical, especially after seeing the results I just mentioned.
TBH.
Yeah, that was a TBH from way back when, so we'll just leave that in the past. I do think, though, we'll say this, the College Football Committee is too subjective, and they, just like the BCS, have their biases. And what I would like to see is a restructure of the NCAA conference in general, and conferences and divisions in general, that seeks to eliminate these committees and the biases. Something like 5 major conferences where they're divided into 2 divisions. The way I would see is kind of like the old NFL structure that we just talked about, where essentially that the winner of the division takes a spot in the playoff. So it's like a 12-man playoff, and essentially you have 10 divisions. If you win the division, you get in, and then 2 wild card would be if you come in second for a designated division that is, contested. Like,
thank you for your response, Mr. Mata.
I'll wrap up. The SEC West is a contested division where LSU, Alabama might get in or not each year. I think if you designate them as a strong division, so where the number 2 team in that division gets in, then I think it'll create a nice playoff structure. I think this, at the end of the day, would limit committees and bias and allow for the best teams to play it on the field. So again, I'll say it, change the format to 5 conferences divided by 2 divisions. And the winner of the division gets in, along with 2 divisions being designated strong divisions, and the second place a finisher in those strong divisions get in as well.
Mr. Rama, what is your rebuttal to Mr. Mata's response?
Interesting takes. Very interesting takes.
Chew on it.
Yes, let's go. I will say this. You're right. The college football playoff was an improvement from the BCS. That we cannot discount. And I will say this. The college football playoff is perfect right now. It's great. It's fine. I would not change any part of it. Any part. Yes, that's a hot take. That's a TBH. I think what we've seen out of the college football playoff is exactly what all college football fans want. Unbiased, not looking at your team in specific and saying, oh, we should have gone in this year, we should have gone in that year. I think I love it because the college football playoff doesn't start, when those New Year Eve games play, or New Year's Day, or whenever they play that semifinal game. They don't start then. They start week 1 of the college football season. Every game has so much importance to the overall trajectory of your team going. I mean, we can speak fondly of it from our team, LSU, last year. Every game, as much of, yes, we were all shooting for that college football playoff spot, but we knew every game, every Saturday was a game that had implication on it, whether we won and how we won. And I think college football, yes, I do agree with you and how you stated that the committee sometimes can be biased. However, I can't name you a team that has, won the college football playoff that we've said they were not the best team that year. We look back since the inception of this, and, Ohio State, they were the first team to win it. back in 2014 against Oregon. But since then, it's kind of been, the same old story. It's the Clemson, it's the Alabama, it's the Oklahoma. But even then, Oklahoma's getting in, but they're getting whooped in the first semifinal game. Ohio State has come in and shown something, but it really has been cream of the crop rising to the top. If we introduce more teams or we get this a little bit messy, it is going to become messy. And I think right now, as we stand, we can't discount that the best team that wins the championship in the last, since this started, the college football playoff, there's no debate that they've been the best college football team that year. I will finish my point with that. LSU, we've made it only once, but as anybody can agree with, we were the best team in all of the land last year.
We will now open it up for discussion between the two of you. Mr. Mata, you'll have the first to rebuttal to Mr. Rama's response on this topic.
I hear you. I hear that the best team wins it. I think my point is that I want more teams just to have the opportunity to get in. So essentially, the top 12 teams get in my scenario. I hear you, and I even made the point about how the semifinal games have been kind of an embarrassment for those teams that lose. But I just think giving it more opportunities for those teams will limit. And my biggest thing is that the bias in the playoff committee I want to eliminate that as much as possible. I think it's just unfair for Ohio State or Alabama or whoever, just because they have a bigger name brand, are going to get in over a number 5 team like Oklahoma State again. Maybe not as big as brand, pretty good big school, but not as big as Alabama or Ohio State. Just because they don't have a bigger brand, the bias is kind of in favor of those bigger schools, and I just want to eliminate that as much as possible. So I know maybe it would make things messy, and also my thing, I would also just eliminate all the conference championship games. I think those don't need to be happening. If you win your division, you get a playoff spot. It gives a chance for you to actually win the championship if you're a top 12 team, and you can prove it on the field. There's no bias telling you you're not supposed to be there or not. So that's just my thing.
Interesting. Very interesting, Peter, and it's well thought out, calculated. The only concern, or the biggest concern I think I have, is just that it takes away from the week-by-week impact that those games have. These big marquee matchups. I'm not going to talk this year because obviously this year is a lot different. But in years past, you look at games like, the LSU-Alabama game, for instance, last year. I mean, in Tuscaloosa, just the amount of implication that game had alone on the playoff. If you allow more teams, it takes a little bit away from the stakes that are in that game.
In the regular season.
In the regular season, exactly. And that's something that, for me, and this is my opinion, college football, what I've loved so much and how I fell in love with it is just the amount of impact each game has on if you can really have a shot at that national championship game. A little bit different than, college basketball, where it is a lot different. It's just a matter of who gets hot at the right time. You can string together a couple wins here and there, make the tournament. But if, you catch hotness as, a couple years ago, like Loyola Chicago, they came out of literally the depths of the abyss just to make a Final Four run, which was amazing. That's a sport that we can really back, as opposed to college football, where really at the end of the day, the cream will rise. The cream will rise. And we look at these, I'm bringing Vegas into the equation, but even these semifinal games, when it's Alabama versus Oklahoma, they're like double-digit favorites over these teams. And if we bring in more teams, it's just going to be more or less the blowout. Yes, occasionally we'll see that surprise upset, as we do in college football from time to time. But I think that it'll just take away from the regular season and just how big some of those marquee regular season matchups are. But yeah, college football is a sport me and you are so passionate about. Mm-hmm. And we love to see change regardless, and we love to see how things play out. So if your proposition were ever to come to fruition, I would still back it, because I'm at the end of the day, I'm a college football fan, and we just love to watch college football.
Right.
That is, there's pros and cons for sure. Pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I still like like I said, the BCS and 4-game playoff, 14 playoff. I still like it. I'm a college football fan like you. I just think I mean, like I hear you on you saying that the regular season might not matter as much, but it's kind of more concentrating it towards the end of the year as you would in any other sport, in college basketball or in the NFL. And I just like in the NFL, past years with the format it has, regular season was pretty crucial. Maybe not each game mattering as much like it does in college football, but it still matters. You can't just rack up 4 or 5 losses and it'll be okay. I just think bringing more teams to the table and having them chance. I know they're probably going to get whooped like we see, but just giving them the chance to see themselves get whooped, I guess, is my point. I don't want any bias. I don't want any complaining or committee saying that they don't belong there. Prove it on the field. If you belong, then you'll belong. And I think overall the product would increase because more players would go, more big name players won't concentrate themselves to those big name schools when they see, okay, at least I'm getting a chance to play against Alabama in the playoffs. So maybe I'll go to a Washington or something like that. That's just my point. I think, again, a great product the college football is, and either way, I'll still watch it just like you will.
Hypothetical speaking, Peter, I'm just saying, let's say they do expand that playoff. I mean, imagine this, and we all know, Alabama, Auburn, Iron Bowl. It's last game of the season for both of those teams in conference play. What if Alabama's sitting there pretty at undefeated and Auburn's, couple losses? Alabama sits all of their stars because they know even with the loss, I'll still be in.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that gets a little bit tricky. The tanking, we see it with the NBA, obviously different context there, but that's something I don't think that would ever happen because Nick Saban or these coaches, they're never the type to just, tank, if you will. But that's the sketchy part that I'm a little bit scared of. And
I think the incentives would be like we did in the NFL previously with the home field advantage. I mean, it's pretty big if Alabama gets to host a playoff game, against whoever. You always want to play at home. So I think that could be worked, but I hear you on that in terms of tanking or anything that.
Can you imagine Alabama at home in Tuscaloosa against Boise State? I mean, it would be fun to just say, what if, Boise State pulls out that upset, just given the opportunity. So I will say that in regards to your points, Peter, as much as we are huge college football enthusiasts, we'd love to see those, the UCFs of a couple years ago, just have a shot and see what they can do. I mean, if it's a blowout, it's a blowout. Mm-hmm. But at least maybe just 1 year, just see how it goes. But yeah, to your point, we love college football.
Yes, indeed.